Hey y'all, it's Kelly. I am gonna do a little video on making Manzanita sugar for patron supporters, and here's the stuff for it. This is kind of a new thing for me, so bear with me and hopefully I'll be able to explain the super simple thing. Manzanita is a native shrub of the West and definitely in California and Oregon, and there's tons of species and some of them endemic to certain areas, so I would do your research on figuring out what species of Arctostaphylos is the most abundant, because it is pretty abundant generally, but yeah, there's some areas where it's just one species that grows there, and then you move to another area and there's another endemic species. So I find this wild food really cool because it's basically like a berry that is almost dry already when you pick it, and you just let it dry a little more and it kind of turns into a powder pretty easily, and makes a natural sugar that then you can put in lots of cool foods, pancakes, cookies. You can make cider out of it, you can make jams, just have it around your kitchen as a wild natural sugar spice. So some people use blenders to make the sugar, and some people use a mortar and pestle, and I have one right here. So I'm gonna see if I can put this camera facing down onto this, and then you can see it a little better. So okay, sorry that took a second. I'm learning how to do this. So okay, here's the berry, and Manzanita's in the heath family, which is also the same family that blueberry is in, and madrone, which is another plant in the West, mainly in California, moves up the coast, I think as far as potentially British Columbia, not sure about that, but it's more of a full-size tree. A Manzanita stays kind of like a bush, and it can also be like a ground cover. And Uva ursi is also an Arctostaphylos in that same genus as Manzanita, which generally grows in high elevation areas. So it can take a few different forms, but you never really see Manzanita as like a tree, but almost. So what I've done so far is pick these berries. Actually, I picked them in Oregon this summer, and I just haven't finished this. I've started. Here's some sugar already. And just haven't finished this project, but I picked them in Oregon and dried them, and then picked out all the like debris for the most part from picking them, like little twigs and stuff. And at this point it's pretty much ready to grind up. So some people put them in a blender, maybe I mentioned that, and then you have to strain out the seeds that are inside, and I could probably put that through the strainer again, but just for the sake of right now, this is what I generally do. So because you don't really need to use a blender, you can use a mortar and pestle if you have one. So I put a few in. I don't really mind some of the twigs, honestly, but take some of that out, and then you smash up these. They're pretty easy to smash up, and you can start to see like the powder in there. And yeah, like this is something that I think people who live in California, like there's definitely lots of people that do know about this, but there's a lot of people that don't know about this. Definitely in the herbal farmer, wild foods world, and native folks know about this plant and how awesome it is to use as a food, but and this is like not like that complicated to figure out, but yeah, it's fun for me to try this as my first video. So this is decently ground up. I mean, I could get those skins more ground up, but I'm starting to feel the seeds in there. So you can see that. I could do it a little more. This is, I don't really know what this mortar and pestle is made out of, but probably one that doesn't have this grit would maybe be better for, like, there's sugar, the sugar kind of gets stuck in there. So now what I'll do, and I have this tea strainer, and it maybe isn't the best thing to use. Like if I wanted to do larger amounts of this at once, I would probably use a bigger strainer, but generally a loose strainer will suffice. And super simple. You stick it in there. And you see here, it's getting a little stuck in there, but I could totally get that out. So now I just kind of start shaking it a little bit, and also using the spoon to push the sugar through. And what I'll probably end up doing with all of this that's left over is grind it again, or try to strain it again. But yeah, it works. I mean, I got all of this that way, and just keep on pushing it through. And yeah, it tastes like sweet tarts. It's crazy. Like, I can't really believe that, but it does. And so I'm not really sure like what the glycemic index of this is, sweetness wise. I think actually I should look in here again. This book, which is Regional to the Sierra Foothills, Nevada City, Grass Valley area, Living Wild, maybe has some information in the back. I should have looked it up before this about, they did a lot of testing on wild plants in this area, like especially the acorns, and like the different protein or different kind of oils and fats and proteins of like acorns and other wild foods. So they might have something on Manzanita, but hey, look, you can see a picture right there of someone also grinding it. And in here they have a bunch of different species listed for using Manzanita, but I wouldn't suggest like using just any species, I think, because of what I mentioned earlier about the endemic situation that happens with Manzanita in California, Oregon, etc. But again, in some places, certain species are just so abundant, and you can pick even just for an hour on a hillside and get a lot of berries, and maybe even, yeah, it's easy to sustainably harvest, I feel like. So, and in here they have a lot of good recipes for this. I think this book is good. Seems like there's some incomplete information on some plants, and some of them I just don't know if I would eat, honestly, but I think it's cool that they're promoting just teaching about some of these local plants, and that they are edible and what you can do with them, or medicinal, so, or what you can make baskets out of. So yeah, and again, I mentioned it, but this Manzanita is in the Heath family, which is just a plant family I really like to think about and study, and it's really interesting to see what grows in that family and what locations, like which of those family members really like acidic soil and grow under pines, like blueberries, who like, yeah, either that kind of climate, or on top of mountains in New England. Like I think about that too with Manzanita, which sometimes you'll see growing on whole hillsides on its own. Anyways, this is not a conversation necessarily about the ecology of that plant family and how this plant relates to that. But anyways, so yeah, here's the basic how-to of Manzanita sugar. And it's so simple, and I'll store this with my spices and use it. It's just so good. Put it in my oatmeal too. Alright, thanks y'all. This was fun, and hopefully it turns out okay. So I'll try to do these more. Thanks.